always been the same. I'm done playing your games, this time it's over. Hit reset, but why can't I seem to put down the controller? You're everything I...
Hey all, Chairwoman from Bedlam Gaming here, and today we're going to be taking a look at Wolfenstein: The New Order. If you're like me, your first memory of Wolfenstein will be back in 1992, a long time ago, when Wolfenstein 3D was released. Lots of people regarded Wolfenstein 3D as one of the original or the founding fathers of the first-person genre, so there's a lot of respect and weight on the franchise. The license has been with Activision for publishing for a long time. It's moved to Bethesda in recent years, and so lots of people, myself included, have been interested to see what the latest iteration of the game would look like. It's been developed by a fairly new development team called Machine Games, and this is one of their first forays into the AAA titles at least, and so it's going to be interesting to see how they get on and whether this release lives up to the franchise's big reputation. Wolfenstein: The New Order is set in an alternate version of history, where the Nazis have won World War II and have taken over the world and are in control. You play as BJ Blazkowicz, who is the main character that's been in a mental asylum for over a decade and has just now in 1960 got control of his mind again, and now wants to carry on fighting the Nazis even though the war has more or less ended. The game plays as a more or less straightforward first-person shooter with a couple of puzzle elements thrown in here and there, and as expected for a Wolfenstein game, there's secret areas, Nazi gold and Mecha-Nazi death robots, and you fight them off with a range of high-powered weapons, and it wouldn't be a Wolfenstein game without that. In terms of gameplay, it feels like an old-school shooter, and it's definitely true to its roots. It reminded me a lot of some of the classic first-person shooters, which is definitely a good thing. It's steered clear of some of the pitfalls that more recent first-person franchises have fallen into. One thing I want to draw attention to is the health system on this game. It's been fairly novel in the way that they've done it. They've steered clear of the regenerative health system, where you'll hide behind a wall and get all of your health back just by having a little rest. In this game, your health will only regenerate to the nearest multiple of 20, and the rest of your health you'll have to get from picking up health packs that are scattered around the area. You can also overcharge your health by taking too much health, so you can eat lots and lots of health and take yourself over the maximum, and what will happen is while you're overcharged, your health will steadily tick away, taking you back down to your maximum cap. And that's been a really interesting model, and what it means is that you can overcharge to a big extreme before a big boss fight in order to have the most health possible. I'm really pleased with this mechanic. It works well, it's very novel, and I think that we'll see a few other developers borrow this idea in games that are soon to be released. I think that we'll see people stealing this idea in future releases. The game doesn't play too linearly. The levels all have a nice amount of freedom in them. You can solve the levels a number of different ways, and I think that that's important and that we haven't seen enough of that in recent years. It also lets you have a good amount of freedom in terms of how you want to play, so you can run around like a maniac dual-wielding sniper rifles if you choose to, or you can use a duck and cover style system to get through, or you can play it really stealthily and can walk around using silenced pistols, throwing knives and all of that sort of stuff. And it's been really good to get that amount of freedom in a first-person shooter. It helps feel less like it's on the rails and more like an immersive experience, and I think it's something that the genre needs to move back to. The controls feel like they've been designed with a console in mind. They've got a leaning system and an aiming system that feel like they require analog sticks to get the best out of it. So playing it with mouse and keyboard's been a bit of a nightmare. That being said, the load times on the console versions are quite lengthy, so I think the best way to probably experience this is to play it on PC but use a console controller in terms of actually controlling the game. As expected for a Wolfenstein game, you've got a nice variety of weapons that you can dual wield or single wield. There's a couple of interesting weapons. They've introduced this laser cutting weapon that has a couple of interesting functions. You can use it to cut through bits of metal in order to find shortcuts or secrets, and you can also use it to cut through holes in cover so that you can snipe through holes and make custom cover. It's a really well integrated system. I like how they've put it in. I think that the inception of it's good, and the way that they've introduced it to the game's worked really well, so I think it's a strong feature for the game. Throughout the game you get various upgrade perks that will allow you to enhance the way that your character plays. The way that they're unlocked are very much in line with your gameplay styles. you play very stealthily, you'll unlock the stealthy perks, and if you play more explosively and run around firing grenades and things, then you'll get the more explosive perks. This feature works really well and definitely lends itself to a good amount of replayability. Looking at some of the negatives on the game, a couple of the textures throughout look pretty bad. Now, I'm quite tolerant with graphics, and if I was very fussy about graphics, I wouldn't be playing this on a console, but there is a limit to how bad it can go, and a couple of the textures are just bad. Looking as well at the options on visual and audio, there's really limited options on what you can control and customize. So in the video options, there's simply brightness, and that's the only thing that you can adjust. And in audio, all you've got is volume. This is a really odd thing to see in a recent release, because it makes problems. My dad's been playing this recently and was struggling to hear the characters' voices, and in most games, of course, you'd be able to turn up the character voices and turn down the effects and music, and that feature is missing from this, and I think it's a real oversight on their part to not include that. In terms of the actual game mechanics, I found it buggy in parts, and you can see here I got a clip of using an elevator that just clips out of the map and takes me into some sort of no-clip hell that I can't escape from. So there's a couple of bits that definitely could have been more thoroughly tested. Also, I've encountered a few enemies that have just given up on life and stopped moving, and you can't kill them, they won't kill you, they're just completely bugged and frozen. And in a couple of spots that this happened to me, the enemy was frozen in a doorway and I simply couldn't get past them and had no option but to restart the level, which was quite frustrating. The AI in certain areas can be very dumb as well. There's a couple of key flaws the AI has in this game. So you can find yourself being chased by a big mecha death robot, and all you'll do is duck into a little ventilation shaft, and suddenly the robot can't figure out where you've gone and will just haplessly stand around the venting shaft waiting for you to shoot it to death in the ankle, which is not exactly what you want in terms of challenge. And some of the enemies as well haven't mastered walking upstairs yet. They follow the Dalek weakness and they can't go upstairs, so if they watch you run upstairs, they'll just say, well, it's gone upstairs, nothing we can do about it now, and they'll stand around until you shoot them to death. Not detracting too much from the game, overall I've had a really good time with this game. It feels difficult in the right places and for the right reasons. It definitely is well paced and introduces features at a good rate in order to keep the gameplay engaging and immersive. It's one of the better first-person experiences I've had in recent years. I can't think of anything in the last year or two that's been quite as novel or as interesting as this. The storyline for the game isn't fantastic, but you don't buy a Wolfenstein game for its storyline. You buy a Wolfenstein game to run around dual-wielding automatic shotguns, blowing up mecha Nazis and stealing their Nazi gold. And on that front, it definitely delivers. There's tons of collectibles and all sorts for replayability. Also, the Enigma codes that you can find throughout the game unlock different settings and ways that you can play the game. And without spoiling too much about what those new settings are, I tell you, a few of them are fiendishly difficult. Really sadistically difficult on some of the Enigma code settings, so there's definitely a lot of replayability and time you can spend in those modes, because some of them are seriously hard. Overall, the game's definitely a great callback to the first-person genre of the 90s. If you have fond memories of Wolf 3D and Spear of Destiny like I did, it'll definitely tickle your nostalgia buds. And if you never got to enjoy some of the great 90s shooters, then this would be a good game, you know, to get you introduced to how they played without having to play with 20-year-old graphics. It's different to what you'll probably be used to with your modern military shooters and Call of Battlefields, but it's definitely a worthy game to try out. There's a lot of challenge to it. On the Uber setting, it's definitely a tough playthrough. Took me about 40 hours to unlock all of the PlayStation trophies on the game, and I haven't even started making a dent into some of the Enigma code difficulty settings and bonus modes there. And for the £40 that it was for the UK release, you know, 40 hours gameplay is definitely worthwhile in my opinion. I've had a great time with this game overall and would definitely recommend it to anyone who's interested in the first-person genre. You'll definitely get your money's worth from it. So say it's £40 on the PlayStation Store in the UK or your regional equivalent, and it's released on the PS3, PS4, Xbox 360, Xbox One, and on the PC. Hopefully you'll try this game out and have as much fun with it as I have. My name's been Chairwoman, thanks for watching.
I've always been the same. I'm done playing your games. This time it's over. Hit reset, but why can't I seem to put down the controller? You're everything I